So I am pinch hitting today, and so I'm probably going to go through this pretty quick. We are going to have this, I'm sure, posted on the KSU website, and I'll try to point out the main things. In particular, one of the slides later on, there's the website address that, and I'll leave that up for as long as I can, that Kwanena has a bunch of spreadsheets where you can plug in your numbers and try to figure out if you're going to make money or not. So first off, getting started in the business, you're going to need startup capital. For me, being more on the production side of things, what I always look at is the very last sentence up here. What I see a lot of failures, and that was a very good point somebody brought up later, we need to look at failures to see how to do things successful. A lot of people are concentrating on getting startup funds, capital costs. But what they really don't realize is you have a long time between startup and your first crop that you're selling and getting that cash flow established. And that's where I think a lot of businesses fall short. I think we do need economic analysis on that, but a lot of people don't make it to their first crop before they're out of money. So this is pretty basic stuff, what you need to get an operation started, and things most people are going through as part of their technical plan, not necessarily their business plan. Obviously you need the right resources, a building, good water, but also you need things like at the end with the proper, if you're doing it in a rural area, you need the right electricity and you need some means of backing that up. Otherwise you're destined to fail. So Andrew gave a good overview of the different ways to do it. One thing that we're looking at is the various stages of raising shrimp. Most people are getting some sort of PL size-wise, be it PL10 or beyond. But how often do you move that animal from nursery into a production tank? Do you keep it there the whole time, or do you stock at a higher density and then split it later as they grow and relieve the pressure on the total population in a particular tank? Pumps, that obviously has to do with the systems you use, and I don't know what Kwanena really meant by solids removal, but definitely effluence is a potential issue, especially with salt water and where you're located. So these are the various systems you need. In particular, I think everybody's using some type of air blower, either to move water or the bacteria around, either for oxygen or for water movement. Heating systems has to do particularly with the building and raising a warm water marine organism in this kind of climate. And then I won't go into feeds and feeding because that's going to get covered. Lab equipment, people have all different philosophies on that. You can go very expensive and very high tech with continuous monitoring, or you can do pretty basic. It's kind of a question of risk. How much information you collect and how good is that information? So I won't go into this much, but we're all here because we think there are definite advantages, or people are questioning, are these advantages significant enough to make this a business? I think the main thing is everybody here is thinking about marketing a quality product, locally grown, but you have to do it indoors, so you have to gain a lot of control. Some disadvantages, obviously you're going to have to invest more money because it's going to be indoor and it's going to need some kind of infrastructure to raise the shrimp in. And I think one thing Daryl pointed out earlier is right now we have not seen a significant disease issue with these indoor systems in the U.S. And I think that is part of the advantage, not just in terms of production, but also potentially marketing. And if you have higher production costs, you're going to obviously need to sell it at a higher price. Again, he covered this pretty well, the different sizes. I would say most people that I've talked to on the consumer side are definitely looking for a bigger shrimp. It's not only that it's locally grown, but they're also wanting, not that it has to be huge, but it has to be of a significant size. They're not interested in popcorn shrimp or salad shrimp that some people call it. They're interested in something that you can really be part of an entree. So again, this is part of the management scheme potentially that you can use is how do you get from the beginning PL stage up through the final grow out. How many, if you are going to use the management scheme where you're stocking high and then splitting after a certain amount of time to get a not only get a handle on your inventory, but potentially get higher survival by having the animals spread out, you're going to need to figure out how many tanks you need to do that and what kind of footprint are you going to need. If you just get PLs, put them in a tank, you only need one tank. But if you're going to split them over time and use 2 or 3 different phases, then you're going to have multiple tanks to split into, and what kind of building do you need, what kind of footprint. So you need to figure out your management scheme before, or you have to do either. Figure out your management scheme to see what kind of building you need, or if I have a building, what kind of management scheme can I use to fit into it. Let's see. So I think what he was trying to point out in this slide is that the larger the post larvae you get to go into your grow out systems, the more benefit. And I think there's some slides farther on with some graphs and stuff that'll show that the bigger animal you put in, the higher your survival, the better your growth potential. Oh, I see. So I think this is whether or not you have a nursery system or whether you're buying PLs at a larger size from somebody else. The advantages are that you get that bigger animal going in. The disadvantage is that you have to put time and energy into growing that animal up to get it into your grow out system. So this is the spreadsheet address up at the top. I'll leave this up for as long as I can. Basically, he has different spreadsheets, like I said, that you can put in your information and it'll generate, I think he has cash flow and enterprise budgets. It's a whole bunch of stuff there. The main thing is, I think he also has sensitivity testing. So you can tell if you have X amount of survival, what will happen to your revenues and costs, and things. I think feed costs are potentially one of them in there too. A slide later on, he's got a breakdown of what the major costs are. But the main thing is, this is the real tool you can use to try to figure out how your finances are doing. And it's not just for, I would say this is not just for people who are thinking of getting into the business. If you have an existing farm, you can plug your data in and get a good handle on where you need to improve things. What costs are significant and maybe hurting you, and where, are you getting enough revenue? And he's got it set up for the various sizes. So is everybody good with me moving on? Okay. So the example slides to come are based on these factors. You've already got a building that you're using or going to use. It's going to be an 8-pool system with that gallons, and then those are the various. This is pretty much a biofloc system, and I think that's probably about a 15-foot pool for each tank. So I won't go into all this, but basically it's got the stocking rate, the size of the animals, and then the numbers that follow will vary by those different production parameters. So this data, the main things to look at are the size of the shrimp at market size on the top, and the difference is the stocking size, basically. The most right-hand column is using larger animals going in, and that affects the frequency of harvest and basically the rearing period and such the frequency of harvest. And basically what it's showing is if you put a larger animal in, you're going to speed up your cash flow by shortening your growth period. So this is how you can also balance cash flow versus income, depending on if there's a differential price for the various sizes. Just an enterprise budget with looking at everything. I guess the important numbers are the cost, the sales price, the amount of shrimp sold per year, and then the various costs. You'll notice that PLs is a very high cost, and I know there's going to be a lot of discussion on that later on. Feed prices, I'm a finfish guy, and if I got 11% of my cost was feed, I'd be super happy. I'd be like, yes. Then the other things are things you can, these are operating costs, but your capital costs influence that as well. A lot of heating and electricity costs can be not negated, but the amount of insulation you're building is going to have an impact on that, how well you heat and cool. So, but he used this as these are real world numbers from a farm. And this is some other things. Now, one thing I think that is significant in this, just looking at it from the outsider, is the building cost. This is relatively low. This is based on somebody taking a building and making some improvements. This is not somebody buying a building and then putting a farm into operation. So that's really something to consider. It will make all these numbers change quite a bit. What is interesting is the break-even price is almost $14 a pound. So it obviously does cost more to grow shrimp indoors here in the U.S. So you got to market at a higher cost than that. If anybody here doesn't know point number 3, I don't know who you've been talking to, but aquaculture is definitely high risk. We don't have a long history of successful operations. We have a pretty long history of failed operations. So the more knowledge and ideas you can get up front, the better off, the more successful you're going to be. So talk to lots of people. And I think that's probably it for that slide. Oh, okay, so this is some of the sensitivity analysis he did on that earlier operations. The 2 critical factors in success for an operation are going to be survival rates of your shrimp and the selling price, okay? Let me think here. So the survival rates are the various colors. The break even is the 0% return or above. And the selling price is at the bottom. Obviously with a higher selling price, with even poor survival, you still are profitable. So it's a question of balancing. The main thing is to get good survival, and you'll always be above profitability. If you can't get good survival, you at least have to have a high price. oh, and let me see. This one was for a standard size PL going in a 14-week grow out. This is for a larger juvenile going in, which would cost more, and a shorter period. And it's generally the same. Survival, higher survival will make you more profitable or profitable over time. And obviously a high market price will help in that as well, even with poorer survival. And this is for even larger, oh no, let me think. This is for smaller shrimp. He didn't say what size they're going in at, but the main thing is to see there's a lot more red in this graph by selling at a smaller animal, smaller count. By going a little bit longer, you gain more benefit. And this is even a higher count. So very small shrimp, even with high, well, relatively high, but you didn't put $18 a pound, but you can see it's mostly negatives because you are going to get less price for those shrimp than a bigger animal. So his main takeaways are you need to be growing a bigger animal. The larger sizes outweigh the cost because you're not putting a lot more into those animals at the very end and you're gaining a significant amount on the retail price. And then people should consider stocking the larger PLs to gain on number one, survival, and number two, reduce your rearing period to increase your cash flow. And I think that's probably about it. And Angel's going to go into marketing, but these are his takeaways from seeing what we have in Indiana. And I hadn't never seen this before. It's it's kind of daunting, really. It makes you wonder why we want to be farmers. That only 11 cents out of every food dollar is returned to the farm. And somebody was talking to me yesterday about how much processing. Oh yeah, my student was saying the more processing in a product, the less the farmer gets. So the more direct sales, obviously the higher return to the farm. Oh yeah, and he had some, so this was some slides he put in about macrobrachium, which has been sort of on the wane in Indiana in terms of number of producers, but it is a shrimp, and the average consumer doesn't know the difference probably between a macrobrachium and a marine shrimp. And obviously this is one of the festivals, and it's over 10 years ago. I don't think anybody is doing this anymore, except for Dave, who put flyers on all your tables. This is a very interesting slide. I don't know if you can see it very well. The shrimp in the middle are Indiana-grown marine shrimp indoor, and the price is $19.99 per pound. On either side are imported regular, what I'll call regular shrimp, at, what is it, $8.99 a pound, and I think it was $9.99 a pound. So double the price for locally grown. And their heads on, those are just tails. Okay, no questions. Actually, I'll be around for both days, and I'll be up for, I guess you have a panel after this?
Yeah, just before lunch.
Okay.
Yep, so we'll have questions on the panel just before lunch. Thanks, Bob.